I think we're going to operate that this video's theme is the quest for 10s, and the two things that need to be addressed before I try to do a 10-second pass with the Datsun is safety and power. Safety, pretty self-explanatory. We got some sketchy stuff going on with the fuel cell back here, and I decided before I jump into building out the whole assembly for the radium fuel cell, I want to put a firewall in the car. Regardless of what fuel cell is back here, having a firewall is important to separate whatever happens with fuel from the cabin. This fuel cell wasn't even vented. God forbid something happens, you have fuel vapors in the car, somehow rotary flame gets in there, boom, big fiery, not fun. So, I've never made a firewall, and I'm very new to working with like aluminum sheet metal, but I'm excited to play with a bead roller and try to make something nice. Then on the power side, we're gonna dive into the intercooler setup, do some testing, and hopefully switch to a better unit. It'll squeeze out a little bit more power and make the car way happier. But I'm waiting for that to show up, so we're gonna jump into the firewall first. Shout out to Drift HQ for the most perfect piece of cardboard I ever could have imagined for this project. I'm gonna take some rough measurements so I'm not stuffing this whole giant thing in the car, and then I have like a better piece to work with. This is where it gets fun. I wonder if I'm better off folding in half and like getting half of the curvature right rather than trying to wedge this in place, take like crappy measurements. I know there's like specific tools that fabricators use for this, and it'd probably be helpful to have them, but I like the fold in half idea, I think. So I'll do this. And then we'll keep meshing this up against the side to try to get the right angle. I got this corner pretty good, but it's kind of a pain to work with, so I'm actually gonna do the opposite of what I originally anticipated, and I'm gonna cut it off so I have a smaller piece to work with, and then at the end I'll just join the pieces with a bigger sheet. But I think this will make it easier for me to kind of like mock it up in 4 pieces, then combine them, versus what I was doing, which is not the easiest thing in the world. So now I can just focus on getting this one piece to fit really, really perfect, which I'm not far off at all. I'd do this one in halves too if I wanted to.
First it's LZ Fab, now it's
LZ Art.
LZ Art.
Giving myself extra to play with by doing this. Wow. Sometimes you impress yourself.
You're gonna attempt to make it a one piece?
Yeah. But it was easier to do this versus working with one giant piece.
No, it's how I worked with the oil tank on the Supra or the enclosure. I just use paper clips.
Paper clips, that's a good idea.
Smart move.
So this really is gonna not make a whole lot of sense, but it's gonna make sense to me. That's all that matters. Mike's like, what the f is he doing? I'm gonna use a stapler, so I'm just giving myself room to staple now.
I see.
1 hour later. Please don't fall apart.
That's pretty damn good.
We're getting somewhere.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that.
It's like almost perfect, honestly. There's like little gaps, but I mean, I can't expect to get it perfect. Like it's snug up top. It's really just in back. I feel like it's maybe a little. Can you look over there and see if you can see light in any particular spot? I feel like it's in the center.
No.
Pretty good.
No, I don't see anything.
I have no idea what I'm doing, so mind you, I may be doing some things backwards, but I wanted to figure out where I was going to create the bend for the firewall to go down before I cut the piece and before I bend the piece. Even though it's going to be separate and I'm going to have the second piece rivet onto this, I wanted to get an idea of what this bend was like because I'm going to bead roll the top piece, so I needed to understand how much surface area I had to work with for the bead roll portion, so I can make a cool design. So this is what I'm working with for the bead roll. Now what will I put in there? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Don't drop on the FD. Jan, what do you think about my shape? Looks cool, right?
Yeah, it looks familiar.
Does it?
Wait, you're not putting the logo on there?
I think there's more chance if I try to do LZ for it to look bad and me waste all this time, versus if I do triangles, it's gonna look good.
That little piece look good. No cap.
No cap. On God?
What?
On God?
Yes.
You
Oh,
said
no, for
you
real,
said
like,
no.
that piece look good, so
You
I
said
can't.
no cap, so I'm checking if it's on God.
Yeah.
I don't know if this piece is too big for this or if it's gonna fit. It looks like it's not gonna fit. I just don't want to waste material.
Yeah.
Ready for our first test fit. I actually like this blade. It's a bit coarse, but it doesn't make a bunch of like aluminum dust because it's so coarse. It just makes shrapnel. A lot easier when you're working with cardboard, I'll tell you what. All right, now we're talking. I want to cut my interior. Ooh, let's eat that.
Back at it again.
This time we're
Bending. Mm-hmm.
Oh, how excited I am to use this thing. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Now, I'm gonna wait to do the bend.
Money.
Nope. Time to send it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not an expert at all. But we're gonna make something pretty. Tell you what. Choose a quick one.
Yo, slow down.
The corner is gonna be the scary part.
You might have to stop and start.
I want to try to run it like round though.
Mm.
I'm just gonna, because I'm going this way, I'm gonna need to really manhandle this machine.
Yeah.
I feel like my straight line could be a bit straighter. I'm just trying to like let the machine do what it wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Should have done a better job on that straight line.
That's alright, it was your first one.
Not bad.
No.
Give me some more speed, Michael.
I'll put you up to 15.
Perfect.
Not bad.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Pretty happy with that. Yeah, just
That
with
looks
this
good.
with this one, I got a little.
Oh, you could try to hammer it down, maybe.
Not bad idea. I'm very happy with how it came out. If I'm being a perfectionist, I guess the two things that someone who really knows what they're looking at would see is that here I messed up and I had a stop and start rather than a nice curve like this side. And then here I overshot a little bit, but I purposely did it on both sides so at least it looks symmetrical. So what you'll see in the car, this is gonna have a tab that bends down, but I'm gonna wait for my final fitment. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how it came out.
No, it's definitely sick.
Is it John approved?
That looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's pretty good, dude.
Yeah.
I say I bend this section I gotta bend here. It's got a couple loose points. Like this point might need to get shaved down. Once it's bent, who knows what's gonna happen. Oh, I did lose the point where I was gonna bend it. It was 2 inches, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so bend it down and then we'll see where we're at. All right, that's 2 inches.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to do a complete 90 bend because there's a bit of a slant to it. too bad.
Nice.
Scratched it up a little bit, but
That's okay.
I feel like it's gonna need to get bent more. But I can figure that out after. So now, like, this piece fits extra tight here because we have this. We can't have the ability to. I mean, I don't know, dude. That's pretty in.
Yeah, that looks sick.
I kind of like how tight it fits.
Mm-hmm. Should fold the seat up and see what the bend's like near it.
Yeah, so I am gonna need to bend it a little more.
Ever so slightly.
Lucky for me, I've got tabs that are already here. Just bending them up. Little tabs that weren't even being used. Now they can be used for my firewall. Find some spacers. Damn it, that's so good.
It's like it should have come with one from the factory.
Yeah. The best thing is, like, it's such a tight fit and it sits on that shelf that I don't even think I'll need to bolt it like up front.
No. Once it's bolted to the other piece.
Pumped. It'll probably only ever come out if I decide to powder coat it. I'm stoked. Got the shelf done, and not only is it functional, it looks really good. For the first time I've made anything like this and not really being experienced working with aluminum or other things, I'm extremely happy. But I'm gonna take a break. Rather than finishing it and doing the rest of the firewall, I'm gonna do the intercooler and retune the car because I'm way too excited to see what results that produces. All right, this is something kind of new for me. I've always seen the horsepower ratings on intercoolers, and I always thought it was based on IATs and its ability to cool air. What I learned with this setup is the horsepower rating, because horsepower is directly linked to the amount of air that goes through something, it has to do with the pressure drop in the intercooler with the amount of air that goes through it. As an example, this intercooler was creating restriction, and we knew that because the wastegate reference was coming off the compressor, and it was running less boost at higher RPM, which typically would be like a characteristic of having too small of a turbo. But when we switched the vacuum reference to the intake manifold, it held boost flat. So that's telling us that we are having a higher boost in this part of the system, telling the wastegate to open sooner, versus this side of the system. So the intercooler basically could not flow enough air, and it was creating more pressure on this side. Now at the same boost, in theory, we should make more power if we put an intercooler in here that flows more air, because when we have a high pressure area on this side, the cold side of the turbine starts chopping air and it becomes less efficient, thus making less power. So if my theory is correct, we'll put a bigger intercooler in here that flows more air, and then it should pick up some power. How much? I don't know, but everything should be a lot happier. Now the problem is there's very few intercoolers on the market that fit my size constraints, and this one does not have a horsepower rating. However, I did read comments and reviews of people with much more power than this saying that it works. On the outside, they actually look pretty similar. It'll be interesting to see what the inside of them looks like, because I imagine that's what really matters. But the good thing is this height is pretty much perfect, and it's just going to basically extend a little bit farther here. We'll probably have to delete the horn, but that's okay because it's been annoying me anyway. And I might even be able to use some of the same holes because of its characteristics. So should be an easy swap. I really wanted to do a Garrett core, but I wasn't able to get the one that I wanted, and then I would have had to weld on end tanks and stuff. So we'll just swap this guy. Should be a nice easy change, and then we can throw it on the dyno and see what difference it makes. Man, whoever designed this. It actually would have been a lot easier to remove before, because before there wasn't even any mounts. Those are from me right there. This is a pretty serviceable system. All right, so looking in here, it looks, I don't know what I'm looking at, if I'm being honest. The fins look different. This one looks like it has more fins.
Maybe they're like, maybe the flow is wider. Like the
Oh, it's a thicker core.
Really?
Yeah. This is a 3-inch, so that means this one was only like 2.5 or 2 3/4.
Yeah.
I was gonna do some sort of fancy flow test bullshit, but we're just gonna put it on and see what power it makes on the dyno. Sorry for Aniqua. I'll need to shave that one off because of the hood latch.
Yeah.
And then horn will definitely need to go. Might as well just open up this window too, because that's not ideal. No guessing, no checking, just sending. I did that one time and I punctured a radiator. Don't be like Adam. The placement's actually almost perfect. I mean, it looks pretty equal. I'll just have to see how the grill fits.
Sick.
Good guess.
10-minute intercooler install.
Yeah, for real. Way bigger too. And the best thing is now the holes are symmetrical instead of this dumb one. I hate that that's there now.
Well, big time welder, fill her up.
That looks like a challenging one. Unfortunately, I'm gonna need to make some intercooler piping because this guy is a little too short. I can like make it work, but it's gonna be a coupler waiting to pop off and it's just not gonna look nice. I'll just need to wrinkle black this down the road. Got a little bit more intense, but we might be learning how to TIG because let's see how my fitment is. I'm pretty happy with that.
Oh, it looks good.
The length is much better than before too.
Yeah.
So about how much filler I added, because it was just like wanting to sink in, but that's really dirty.
I was gonna try to weld this one, but it was not prime conditions. The new intercooler is successfully in. It was actually quite tricky. That little 1/4 inch made it so the grill barely wants to fit. I don't know if you guys could tell, but before and now, it's actually bulged out way more than it should down here, but I'm able to pull it in with this bolt and this bolt, so you really can't tell on the headlights, but the intercooler is literally pressing right up against the grill, like that. The little piece we had to modify, luckily I had some wrinkle black, so I was able to spray it, you could barely even tell. I wanted to TIG it, but quality of the pipe was a little rough. So my theory with this, if before the main restriction was up top where it was bleeding off boost, I assume the intercooler will probably make a difference up top, and hopefully we'll see less rollover here. Probably not much more power down here since we weren't facing an intercooler restriction, but maybe up here. Let's find out. Well, we might be in for a lot more power than I expected. The car only made 7 pounds on that last hit. I let off because it was starting to get into 13s, and it made almost 40 more horsepower than it did before. Picked up power pretty much everywhere, so that intercooler might have actually been a massive restriction. I'm gonna go add a bunch of fuel to the fuel map just to play it safe, but I think we're definitely in for a treat here. So I was kind of wrong and I was kind of right. It did make that much power, but I may or may not have been an idiot and I thought that we were making 7 pounds. And then when I looked at the log, I realized that I just didn't have the window open up all the way. And the car made like 17 pounds. So it picked up like 3 pounds of boost just from removing the intercooler restriction. What that tells me is unfortunately, I may need to change the wastegate spring now since the car wants to make more boost. For an ethanol or race gas, it'd be fine, but Vargas told me the rule of thumb is like 14 pounds or so on pump gas, so 17 is definitely pushing it. And annoyingly enough, because of the issues I was having with this car, I wasn't running a boost controller because I wanted as much spring pressure as I could have. So to change boost, I need to take the wastegate off to change the spring. Maybe now I'll put a manual boost controller on it, but this ECU doesn't have a boost controller wired up. I don't even know if I can have a boost controller wired up. It'd be real nice to have one. I'm gonna look into that. I've been trying really hard to resist the typical Adam urge to just throw a bunch of money and parts at this thing. But let me tell you, having a TurboSmart wastegate instead of this one would have made life so much easier changing the spring in the car, because all these little Allens are so annoying to work with, especially when everything's hot. The TurboSmart has like one big nut on the top and it's a dream compared to this. Available at Drift HQ, believe it or not, always. Work you out a deal on a turbo kit. Hit us up. Sucks because we don't have an apples to apples comparison, but the car only made 12 pounds of boost removing the spring. I didn't even have the opportunity to split the difference. I'm gonna have to put a manual boost controller on it to get the boost back to 14 pounds. But when you look at the graph, at 2 pounds less boost, you can see already up top, it looks like it's a little bit closer to 14 pounds than it was, say, in the mid-range. So I'm curious to see 2 more pounds, where's it gonna end up? The good old vacuum tee to bleed out a little bit of air. Let's see if this thing's good for 2 pounds. All right, we're gonna POV on this one so you guys can see exactly what it makes. little bit too much. So, unfortunately, not unfortunately, now since we know that we're not oversprung, I can probably just clamp that little T down and fix it a little bit there. 17 pounds is a lot. It's going a little lean too, so I'm gonna add a bunch of fuel there to play it safe, but hopefully we can get the boost down a little. Finally got the boost under control and was on the path to a good pull. Made 344 wheel with good fueling, and it was probably gonna keep climbing. And then I think my throttle broke. Something weird happened and the throttle cable popped off the throttle body. And it seems like this actuator back here is not doing what it's supposed to, so chances are I'm gonna need to take this thing apart and see what's going on. Oddly enough, I can't find any explanation as to why the cable popped off. Everything looked like it was operating how it should. I called Vargas, he said everything looked normal. He thinks maybe the car the entire time I've had it has never actually been going wide open throttle. We've never checked, like pressing the gas pedal to see what happens. I'm gonna recalibrate the TPS real quick just in case something changed, but it's possible that we may have more power just from a throttle body that wasn't opening, imagine. Just for the heck of it, I looked at an old log, and indeed, we are only going to like 80% TPS before. Now, if I close playback, I have 100% TPS, so 10% left of the throttle that wasn't being used. That's pretty big. Car was getting kind of heat soaked, so I let it cool down. Gonna make a pass, and then we'll have our final numbers to compare. Now, as much as I'd like to attribute the gain to the new intercooler, there are a couple things that came into play here. When we turned boost down back to the same where it was, we gained about 20 wheel everywhere. Could you attribute it to the intercooler, the throttle fix, or one of the boost leaks we found on the intake that's from like the EGR block-off plate? Could be a number of things, but the intercooler definitely was necessary and made a difference, and this is why I know. With the same wastegate spring that was in there, this is how much power it made. Now, fueling was good and it's probably safe to run, but 17 pounds on pump gas is kind of playing with fire, so I decided to turn it back down to 14.5 pounds. So we'll be trying to make our 10-second pass at 350 horsepower. When we want to make 400 plus, we'll just put it on ethanol. But that's for another day. Stage 1, 10-second pass on pump gas. Now back to the Firewall. Now before I go start working on my Firewall again, the question is, can you feel a difference with 20 to 30 horsepower? Me and Michael will be the judge.
I am ready.
Does it feel different?
Yeah.
So the brakes actually work a lot better now. The front rotors weren't really doing anything because they were so warped, so I had them turned instead of buying new rotors, and now they actually stop.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I love that for me. I'm gonna try to not granny shift the 1-2 and see if it'll take it.
Yeah.
Hopefully no granny shift. The synchros don't like it, but I was able to get that 1-2 like pretty quick. If I do that on the drag strip, it's either gonna break the gearbox or we're gonna probably run a low 7-second pass.
Low 7 seconds.
Maybe 6s.
True.
Back in arts and crafts. Time to finish up the rear Firewall. Starting to make one half, then hopefully I can just duplicate it for the other side. I am gonna cut this tab out, but that's gonna be messy, so I'm gonna wait to do that until I'm ready to get messy. In the meantime, just keep on working on getting this thing dialed and close up as many gaps as I can. Mike brought up a good point that I was thinking, but I didn't want to acknowledge it until it came to the point where I needed to start grinding stuff. This is all super flammable, so if I build a Firewall and I leave this stuff, I'm basically allowing fire to enter the cabin. So I took out the rear seat, and now before I can get to the fun stuff, I just gotta take out all this gross insulation. I should almost just put this in the trash bag of its big pieces.
Yeah. At least it comes up easy.
Yeah, but I don't know how I'm gonna get the rest of it off. I came up with an idea. I don't know if this is an actual thing or if I was just inspired by Johan's fab tool. I started cutting slits in the cardboard like this and then using it as a gauge to get my starting point, and it was way easier than working with it the other way, because then I could just take this, I could push it on a piece of curvature and then slowly chip away at the things, and you can see that's how I use to get my curvature, and I'm just stapling pieces together. They're not, unfortunately, the same on each side, but I'm almost to the point where I can start to cut and get this thing where I need it to be.
That looks sick.
Yeah.
It's like right there.
Yep. Actually, do you mind passing me the other one? I can stable these together. Hours later, I'm getting ready to send it. I'm gonna just put this out there that my expectations for fitment are nowhere near as good as my fitment on the upper area. There's so many more curves. It's been a real challenge, and I'm having to just give up being an absolute perfectionist and just get it done. So I'm gonna cut out my shape and then leave the last straight line for last, just in case I need to do some shaving. But I'm gonna try to leave the line. That way I have room to shave things off versus cutting it too small and then wasting all this aluminum. I'm ready for the first test fit. I got so much junk in here. Hopefully it's easy to put in. Fitment is actually really good. The bottom edge though has a bit of a gap, so I'm gonna use a straight edge, kind of like this. I'm gonna push it down and then run the Sharpie to understand how much I need to shave off, because it's contacting right here, so that'll kind of give me my reference line. Because everywhere else we're pretty much good. It's just a few areas that have a little bit of a gap. Like I said, it's not perfect. The biggest thing that I'm really bummed about are these gaps down here. Typically I would have just like hammered from underneath the chassis, but the problem is there's the subframe there, so I can't do that. What I'm thinking though is I will make the bracket that holds this in place by kind of like creating like a flat tab there from the back, so that'll kind of fill in the gap anyway. In the meantime, what I'm gonna do is basically bead roll this piece, and then after that I'm gonna do my final fitment, and then I'll do the last top line. For now though, I'm just gonna put a rough kind of line on it so I know where my bounds are for bead rolling. It's a big moment.
Final stomp. Maybe. Where is the blade?
Yeah.
It's this piece
the
right
flat
here.
thing?
Yeah.
How does that cut it?
It's just sandwiching two pieces of metal together. It's just one big pair of scissors, basically. You think you're good,
up
but
there and jump with me?
yeah. Let's see if I can actually just cut the prop.
Watch your fingers. 1, 2, and might be a little high. Might need to cut a little bit lower, but at least I got my bounds for my bead roll.
Mm-hmm.
Should I fill again, or should I just go to the bead rolling? The bead rolling's the fun part.
I would go to the bead rolling.
Yeah.
You can always take a little extra if you need to.
You're not wrong, but I wonder if this machine would mess up my bead roll. I thought I would be cool and I would bead roll rotors into it, but it doesn't look anywhere near as cool as I thought it would. And it's going to be way more tricky to have the radius, so I think I'm just going to do a traditional like diagonal design like this. This should be a lot easier because it has the straights and stuff, but I obviously need to erase these now and redo it. I must need like special lighting or something because it's so hard when I'm like just getting so much reflection off the aluminum trying to be precise. It'd be nice if I could throttle it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna try not to go too far because I can always go farther. Are you ready to send it? How's my timing gonna be? I overshot it a little bit. Hola! I may need to trim a little bit more out of the top, but I'll find that out when I put it back in the car. Then probably boom, 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 boom. And then I will riv nut into that other one, attach it to that, and I should tie everything together. Bottom brackets will probably wait till tomorrow just because I'm running short on time, but so you can see how this thing looks. It's not 100% done, but it's done enough to close out the video. Little gaps I'm gonna probably work on closing with the brackets that I'll make down here tomorrow. Final fit and finish, I'll probably riv nut it, maybe powder coat it. But overall, having absolutely no idea what I was doing and jumping headfirst into something mildly difficult, I'm very proud of it, and hopefully it inspires some of you guys to take a dive into something that maybe something you don't think you can do, because this is probably the most fabricating I guess I've ever done. This car in general, between the exhaust and this, but it's cool. It serves a safety purpose. It looks good, even though it'll be covered up by the seat. Yeah, I'm stoked. Thanks for watching.
When you said